wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. With a little bit of humor, which is always good. And I appreciate all of you being here when there's so many wonderful competing programs and a cocktail bar. And I was informed before this that I need to keep it to 45 minutes because people are gonna want to be able to mingle, and I'm gonna do my very best. So I will rely on my tags for time, but I have a lot of content to cover. So we'll cover what we can, and I wanna make sure that people have the ability to ask questions, whether they're questions on the app, whether they're questions directly to me. I think, I was so impressed. I had the opportunity to get on the Whova app, which I think is a fantastic app for engagement, and we're able to put up a couple polls, and really interesting to see some of the polls that are coming back about what people would do if money was no object, and what some of folks' favorite causes are, and how people are philanthropic, because philanthropy is so many different things. People often hear philanthropy and they think you have to be of means to be philanthropic. You have to be of a certain income level or net worth level to be philanthropic. And it really is not that way. Philanthropy can be accomplished at so many levels. It's time. People serve on boards, they serve on committees, they volunteer. It's talent. People give their expertise in so many ways, in-kind contributions with services, with areas of expertise, and it is treasure. It's giving. It's giving at various levels. It all matters in different ways, and it's all possible. And it's social capital and networks. And one of the things that we handed out was the Women in Philanthropy brochure, and I'll talk a little bit about that. That is not what the entire presentation is about. That is just an element of what we do at the Scranton Area Foundation that engages women in transformative giving. And it's based on a lot of the themes and concepts that I'm going to talk about today, things that we've learned through research about how women give, how women like to give, how they view philanthropy, how the great wealth transfer is going to change women's giving moving forward. But I basically can say that I think no matter why you're in this room, whether you represent a nonprofit organization and you do development, whether you want to know how to maybe more effectively or more currently talk to donors, whether you're a financial advisor, one of the things that we've learned is that so many people, gender neutral, want to know more about philanthropy from their professional advisor. They want their professional advisor to be able to talk to them about philanthropy. They want nonprofit professionals to be able to talk to them and guide them about philanthropy. So I think no matter why someone is in here, hopefully it'll apply to you. Another reason is maybe you're from a family business. Maybe you want to better be able to prepare your family business to think how to do philanthropy, how to have these conversations. So I think it's applicable regardless of why you're here. Times are changing. Wealth is transferring. Right now, women control a little bit of over 50% of private wealth. But research is showing that at the close of the decade, that is going to change to nearly 3/4 of all of the wealth in the United States. And that matters for so many reasons. It matters because women give differently. And many times what you'll hear and what you'll hear through the research, and a lot of the things that I'll read is from the Giving USA report and varying studies, so Stanford Social Innovation Review, et cetera. And a lot what comes back is, while women are getting more control of wealth, they're not being approached in the way that they necessarily want to be approached by those that manage their money, by those that they want to connect with on a deeper level in terms of professional advice. And so there's a real opportunity to talk to women in the way that they want in terms of mutual respect. That's what comes through. So, you see this big wealth transfer coming, and there's a lot of reasons behind it. A lot of it has to do with obviously the shift with the baby boomer generation in obviously inheriting or keeping wealth from spouse, from their own earnings, shifts in terms of new demographics, more women getting bachelor's degrees. 58% of the bachelor's degrees right now are held by women. Another example is the workforce. Post-COVID, more women have recovered their jobs post-COVID than men. But when you think about it, men were so far ahead to begin with that it doesn't necessarily tell the full story. There's a lot of reasons behind the great wealth transfer. But what it's saying is that it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to guide women into thinking how to be more innovative with philanthropy and to approach it in various ways. But it's important to know that women, as a rule, don't necessarily feel that they're being approached in the way that they want to be to make these decisions. So a lot of what I'll talk about is, there's some specifics on the slides, but it's more conversational. So I'll provide this, after the presentation. There's gonna be a lot of content on here, a lot that I'm gonna talk about. But basically, when people are thinking about being philanthropic, a lot of times they wanna have the conversation directly with the nonprofit leader. They wanna have it with their attorney, their accountant, their financial advisor, their insurance agent. It can go many facets because philanthropy can be done in so many ways. But basically, what it means is that there's often a lot of advisors at the table. What's interesting is women are much more likely to hire a financial advisor than men, affluent women. So again, it's really an opportunity in thinking about that. But it tells you if you're from a nonprofit organization, if you're from a foundation, if you're in any way trying to raise money or connect with women, it's best to also be able to connect with their advisors and to help streamline that conversation so that they're better serving that donor or that client in various ways, because the legal pieces, the accounting pieces, all of the things that make an effective, impactful, charitable gift connect. So why is philanthropy important to begin with? Why is it important? Philanthropy is changing. It's not necessarily transactional anymore. You see LLCs anymore that are philanthropic. It's not always the nonprofit 501c3 structure. It's not necessarily always the foundation. There's the charitable funds at the banks, at the private financial institutions. There's like I said, the LLCs. There's different structures about philanthropy, but what it is it brings people together to serve their community. It has a ripple effect. It has a pay-it-forward effect. It inspires others. It offers physical and mental health benefits. It's essential to society. It's truly an American tradition. There's so much about the history of the United States' entrepreneurship and kind of that can-do spirit that ties into entrepreneurship. There's a book called The American Tradition of Philanthropy, and what it does is it chronicles all of the different advances in philanthropy that were started by different businesses in the United States. So you see like Rockefeller Foundation, and you see all these business names and foundations, and it's because it's really an American tradition. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. Philanthropy doesn't happen in other countries. Absolutely it does. But there's something about the fabric of the American society that has philanthropy at its core, and it means that government can't necessarily address all of the social problems. Sometimes philanthropy is the innovator, and if it's that good, and if the outcomes are that good, government will continue to sustain and fund it. Giving USA study shows that philanthropy is really changing over time. But what stays the same is some of the themes that show how women like to give. And that'll kind of be illustrated in the Women in Philanthropy model. So what Women in Philanthropy is at the Scranton Area Foundation is a collective philanthropy model. So you've probably heard giving circles, right? Where people contribute in, and it's not always women's giving circles. Sometimes it's a young professionals giving circle, but it's people contributing a certain amount of resources. and then it's pooled together, and then big impact comes from that. Well, one of the reasons why we established Women in Philanthropy at the Scranton Area Foundation, which is now nearly 125 supporters strong, is because, and I want to get to that really quick and then come back. Jump back to this. The Women and Girls Index, which chronicles the majority of the nonprofit and charitable organizations in the US that are aimed at helping women and girls, is severely underfunded. When you think about the percentage of nonprofits serving women and girls in the Women and Girls Index, it's a little bit over 3%. When you think about the amount of funding actually going to support women and girls, it's barely over 1%. There's a major gap. There's not enough funding going into issues that impact women and girls directly. Why does that matter? It matters because we know that 90% of every dollar, every $100 that a woman gets, that a woman receives, goes directly to her family. That is not the same percentage as men. It just isn't. The stats don't show it, which means that if you're funding issues that impact women and girls, you are making a difference for families. And so that was one of the reasons why we started Women in Philanthropy. There needs to be more funding aimed at issues that impact women and girls: finance, entrepreneurship, issues that help women and girls advance economically, STEM education, aspects like that. The other aspect is women like to give more collaboratively. They like to see the impact of their gift. Sometimes they want it to be more hands-on. Not only cutting a check, but also going and looking and seeing what are the results, what is the impact of what has been accomplished of my gift. So it's a model that aims more at a collective fashion, but it's important to know that there really needs to be more funding aimed at women and girls. Okay, so philanthropy is changing in the sense, too, that it's becoming more aimed at an end goal, an end option. So when you're talking to women, when you're talking to, whether it's your donors, whether it's your clients, a lot of times people have higher expectations now. They want an outcome. They want an outcome from their philanthropy. They don't necessarily want to do sprinkling checks here, checks there. So having that kind of knowledge and advice to give them is something that is really more in line of what people want. Another thing that's important to note is women that are of higher means, but they're younger generations, so maybe they're millennials, maybe they're Gen X's, they're actually expecting that philanthropy is now an indicator of wealth. So when you're considering the concept of wealth, philanthropy is becoming more of a vehicle of that. It's more of an expectation, becoming more philanthropic in that way. So even if you're not directly working for a nonprofit or directly working in donor development and you're working in finance, you're working in business, philanthropy is an important conversation to be able to have because of this. Okay. So again, I went over why philanthropy is something that is changing for the better for women. It's the amount of women in the workforce, the amount that are being able to return to the workforce, the amount of bachelor's degrees, education, and the advancements we're going to see there, labor participation, projected of 30 trillion in wealth, again, 70-some% of all of the wealth at the close of the decade, focused specifically in the hands of women. Majority of these are gonna be in retirement assets, but that's great because there are so many tax advantage strategies for women giving retirement assets, if that's something you'll want to know about as well. Okay, so some facts. Oh, I'm going the wrong way because it's counterintuitive. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So who gives more? Women or men? Single women give more and give more frequently than single men. And in 10 years, the number of single women in the workforce is going to be 45%. We're getting to a significant amount of single women for varying demographic reasons. So the amount of single women are growing that are going to be of means, that are going to be in the workforce. Single women give more, single women give differently. So it's important to be able to have conversations that matter to single women. Single women give more to religious causes than single men. And it's important to note, too, that of the 3 top causes nationwide that drive philanthropy, religion is still in that top 3. That doesn't crowd out other areas, but it's a different type of giving, and it's important to note. Now, marriage changes the dynamic of philanthropy a little bit, because when a couple is married, research shows that if the man increases his income, philanthropy starts to increase, but it starts to increase in issues related to military-related, defense-related issues, community development, such as Habitat for Humanity, issues related to that. When a woman increases her income, it increases in areas of education, areas of healthcare. So depending on who is increasing their income, sometimes the philanthropic priorities change. But I think what that tells us is it's very important to be able to maintain the conversations with single women, with single men, with married folks, with everyone. But it's just that often you're going to see different shifts in terms of philanthropic priorities if the research shows us that. When we think generationally, it tells a whole different story. And sometimes you're seeing different themes based on this. It might be Giving USA, but then you might see another research study that contradicts that. But basically, boomers give the most. And that's not surprising, because folks that are in that demographic have been in the workforce, they've accumulated wealth, they have a certain high income level, they perhaps have more disposable income to give. But when we think about the amount of increase percentage-wise of giving, from 2016 to 2022, the generation that has increased their giving 40% is Gen Z. So Gen Z, the youngest generation, is really increasing their philanthropy. And Gen X and the boomers are kind of holding steady at maybe a 2 to 4% increase every year. So you're really seeing Gen Z pick up their giving, and you're seeing the boomer generation and you're seeing Gen X kind of maintain more stability. You're seeing shifts in priorities of giving. What's really interesting, too, is you go back to the concept of non-secular giving, religious giving. Well, the millennial generation went from 46% to 69% saying that they frequently attend religious services. Now, that was really surprising when I read that, because you hear about church services sometimes perhaps not being as popular post-COVID, people watching it from home, people non-participating in that. And you think about it, is that, you're surprised to see those numbers, but that is what the research is showing. And the reason behind a lot of that, I think, is that in many cases, millennials are starting families. They're perhaps integrating their families into churches, into synagogues, into any type of religious service. And from there, what's happening is attendance correlates with giving. So I think even with younger generations, you're going to continue to see giving in the religious sector. What you're seeing, though, in terms of a shift in the types of gifts that women make, younger generations, Gen Y, Gen Z, is more giving to environmental causes, more giving to animal welfare causes, a real shift in that regard. So you're seeing varying shifts within the demographic. What you're also seeing is aspects of volunteering. So again, we go back to different types of philanthropy. Time, talent, volunteering is a significant component of that. Women volunteer more. What does that mean? It means that they want to serve on boards. They want to place on boards. There's all aspects of volunteering, but what it also means is that within the female and the male gender, there are varying generational demographic issues there. So the Gen Z is known to kind of be more of an activist-y type of generation, right? Active, wanting to do, wanting to be a part of different causes, not just giving, but doing. What we're starting to see there is that trend is only increasing. So research is showing that it's not necessarily correlated with income or wealth. So somebody might look at Gen Z and say, well, they have more time than they have wealth, right, at this point in their life. They're building a career, so they have more time to donate. But what it's showing is that's not necessarily the case. It's just a mentality in the generation that perhaps is going to persist over time, meaning that you're going to see that volunteering, that activist, that service leadership mentality grow and continue to pick up regardless of income. So that's another thing that's important to know. Crowdfunding. So another reason why giving is changing in terms of different types of programs you'll see. You know, for example, the Scranton Area Foundation, we run NEPA Gives. There's giving days all over the country. A lot of it has to do with the online platforms, crowdfunding being a theme. Women tend to use or to engage in crowdfunding more than men. At least, you see the stats here, but at least 1 out of 3 women give to a crowdfunding campaign in a typical year. What is crowdfunding? It can be aimed at a charity, a cause, an individual. So many different things. You see it on GoFundMe. But it's often paired with, in a lot of ways now, what we see for online giving. For example, NEPA Gives. Well, that's crowdfunding. And that's just, I say NEPA Gives because we're in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's something we champion at the Scranton Area Community Foundation and the Luzerne Foundation and the Wayne County Community Foundation and Carbon County. It's 8 counties strong. But it is kind of a crowdfunding online giving strategy where a donor can give $10 and that can transform into $100 simply because of all the sponsorships, the matches, the incentives that are a part of that. So it's a crowdfunding-ish type of model that's very based on online giving. And I think it's not surprising that the Gen Z generation, the millennial generation, really comfortable with crowdfunding. High percentages using the online platforms to give. And it's growing within it's growing within Gen X, it's growing within the boomers as well. So it's definitely, it's a here to stay kind of technology for that. So one of the things that I think is important to have with any conversation, whether it's yourself, whether it's a professional advisor having this conversation with a client, whether it's a nonprofit leader having this conversation, is always asking the individual, you know, what do you want to see? What do you want to change? What matters to you? It's really about inspiring and thinking about what you want to change. And that's why I look on the app, and I was so impressed with just so many of the causes that matter. So many really impactful causes, stories that sometimes pair with it. Maybe someone, you know, has been dealing with a specific health issue and they want to change that for someone else. I've seen a lot of inspiring philanthropy come out of those stories. Maybe someone wants to pursue education and they want to make it easier for others to pursue a scholarship. So I can't share the polls, unfortunately, but I would like to share out some of the results from that because I think they really are telling, and people are very generous. Women are very generous and they want to accomplish a lot of great things. I also saw that the most common way that women give back that has responded to the poll was through board service. And that's pretty amazing because I think one of the things that we've seen is we collectively, whether it's nonprofits, whether it's business, for-profit, we want to see boards increase in terms of the amount of women, the amount of diversity on our boards. We need to see that in terms of effective governance, effective leadership. So I think that's another important thing to see. A lot also have giving to charity, paying it forward, which is kind of more of a casual way to do philanthropy. Somebody buys a coffee for you in line, and you buy it for the next person. You're doing philanthropy. You can do philanthropy every day in different ways. But when we think about a more collective way to do philanthropy, it is things like NEPA gives. And I'm just going to put a little pitch out for it. So June 1st, June 2nd, 7 p.m. kickoff in Wilkes-Barre, 7 p.m. close in Lackawanna County, and again, 8 counties. Over 275 nonprofits will be participating. It's the 4th year we're doing it. And the amazing part of it is it costs $2.30 for a nonprofit to raise $100 through NEPA gifts. So it's a really effective way to do that. That's collective philanthropy. Women in Philanthropy is collective philanthropy. 9 years ago, 12 women sat down in a room at the Scranton Area Foundation and said, how can we make transformative change? There's a lot of great things already going on. There's charities working on such important issues that impact women. But what can we do to help lift women and families out of poverty? And focused on specific areas: financial confidence, entrepreneurship, STEM education, restorative dental care, housing, childcare, civic engagement, things that really matter economically and otherwise to a woman's and family's health and well-being. And so in the ability to start an effort like that and have committed women, like I said, 125 strong, that commit a certain dollar amount every month, whether it's $8, whether it's 20-some dollars, it's not about the dollar amount, it's about the engagement, it's about the coming to the table, it's about the sharing your talents. You know, there are so many aspects of something like a Women in Philanthropy, and I say that because that's a model that has been replicated in many other places, but it's something where women are coming to the table to make change for other women. So what I want to do is, I want to jump to some of the hardcore areas of how to guide donors into good strategies in the time that we have left. So, how does an advisor, how does a nonprofit executive guide anyone, woman, man, anyone into making the right charitable decisions? Again, a lot of charitable decisions come from the heart. They come from wanting to be innovative. They come from wanting to make a difference. A lot also come from donors want to be able to fit it into a life plan, into a wealth plan, into making sure that they're making the right decisions to not only be philanthropic, but perhaps to leave resources for heirs, or perhaps not, perhaps set up a pet trust, perhaps do a lot of things that they want to accomplish while doing things in a tax advantageous way. So one of the things we do at the Scranton Area Foundation, and what a lot of other foundations do, is manage charitable funds, enable people to be able to do this. One of the most common things that you see in terms of philanthropy that's been growing in popularity anymore is donor-advised funds. Donor-advised funds is the most flexible fund, and you can set up a donor-advised fund with a very small amount of money. Like I said, a person doesn't have to be of significant means. They can be growing their career. They can be setting up a memorial fund to benefit someone, but a lot of people want to set up donor-advised funds because they can name these funds. I set up a fund, the Scranton Area Community Foundation. It's a non-endowed fund. It's not of a certain threshold. I put money in, or others put money in, and I pass it out to charities. A lot of people set up family funds, or they raise money through donor-advised funds, but it gives the donor the ability to make decisions as they choose for charities they want to, and that is a growing, popular fund. Another great thing about donor-advised funds is it doesn't have to be funded with cash. It can be funded by appreciated securities, appreciated stocks. It can be funded by property, real estate, art, antiquities, cars, retirement funds. There are so many ways that an individual can be philanthropic, and cash is not always the most tax advantageous way for them to do that. And that's why it's helpful to know a lot of these nuances in order to be able to guide people. But the basic thing to know is the donor advised fund is one of the most popular current models that people want and should be able to know about, that it's an option for them. They don't necessarily have to start a private foundation to be philanthropic. They can use a donor advised fund. They can set up a scholarship fund and fund scholarships through the community foundation or other entities. So a little bit about appreciated property and why that's important to know and what's important to know about that conversation. Basically, there's 3 tax reasons that you should be able to know for yourself, to be empowered with this information, to be able to advise others about it. It's income tax related benefits to charitable contributions. It's estate tax related contributions. And those are really the main reasons why you should be able to have these conversations. So when you think about income tax related, it depends on, and I won't go into all the details, but it's whether in terms of if a person itemizes or doesn't itemize. But the benefit to funding any kind of fund with appreciated property versus cash is that when a person gifts a stock to a charity at whatever cost it is, and the charity sells it, the donor gets the deduction, the tax deduction for the market rate value of the stock, but doesn't have to pay the capital gains tax on it. The charity doesn't pay the capital gains tax on it. So in a way, the charity is getting a bigger gift from the donor that they would have given if they were given in cash. Similar to real estate. Antiquities, even more. The capital gains, the typical capital gains is about 20% tax. Antiquities, art, collectibles, it could go up to 28%. So these are the things that are important to know when you're having these conversations. To be able to advise people when they want to give and when they want to be philanthropic, there are ways that it's going to be more impactful for them to do that. So knowing the basic. Another thing that's really important to know is one of the more popular ways to fund philanthropic vehicles, like donor advised funds, like charitable remainder trust, is retirement plans, the IRA, individual retirement account. And so one of the things that you probably have heard is called the Secure Act, right? That's like that was enacted in 2019. The Secure Act has been set up at the federal level to try to make it easier to save for retirement, to make it more accommodating in various ways to save for retirement. There have been 100 aspects in that act aimed at making it easier to save for retirement at various levels. But why it matters to charitable giving, why it matters to philanthropy, is that not only does it raise the age that a person has to start taking their required minimum distributions, but it also enables, and why does that matter? That matters because in many cases, a person doesn't want to take that distribution yet. They don't want to add it to their tax base. So it gives more flexibility. But what it also does, which is really new to the 2022 version of this, it's like Secure 2.0, is it enables a person, a donor, to say, I also want to use $50,000 from my IRA, or I want to use $100,000 from my IRA if I'm married, to fund a split income vehicle. What does that mean? And why does that matter to nonprofits? It matters because a split income vehicle, 3 minutes, all right. Okay. A split income vehicle is something that the donor gives and gets with. A split income vehicle is a charitable gift annuity. It's a charitable remainder trust. It's a charitable lead trust. It gives the donor the tax deduction to make the gift and gives them, in so many cases, an annuity back. So a charitable gift annuity is something we manage at the Scranton Area Foundation, and many other colleges, universities, entities manage it as well. But what it means is that a person can make a gift, get a charitable gift annuity for $10,000, get that deduction that year for making that gift, and every quarter get an annuity payment back, a certain percentage rate, which are higher now because interest rates are up. So a person that's using an IRA under the Secure 2.0 Act is able to make that gift now to a split income gift, which is really important because people like to see that stability of the money continually coming in. So it's important to know that. Charitable remainder trust is a large gift to the charity. The donor gets the same kind of thing, an annuity. A charitable lead trust is really interesting. Sometimes you'll hear it's called the Onassis Trust, for example. They're often used more for estate planning. They're used to skip a generation in terms of making the gift to the charity. The charity's getting the gift over years, and then at the end, it passes to the donor, so it avoids the generational transfer tax. So that's just important to know basic stuff about the Secure 2.0 Act that a lot of people don't know yet. It's that you can do that, it's extra, and it's good for donors to be able to have that knowledge when you're having those philanthropic conversations. So if you're gonna take away any tangible things from this, I would take away that women are gonna control 70-some% of the wealth by the close of the decade. They have to be included in conversations, not only of investments, of wealth, of philanthropy. They want to be. They often want to give differently. In many cases, they do give more. In many cases, they give to other causes. I think it's important to keep in mind that there are specific charitable planning strategies that can make it more tax advantageous for your organization or to get more charitable gifts coming in, because you can have these conversations. If you're not representing a charity and you just want to be armed with this information, maybe it's for you, because maybe you are building your career or you've built your career and you want to become more philanthropic and you want to know how to do it more impactfully for yourself. So I would take away a lot of those major themes from this. I won't go into any more of the specifics because we're out of time. There's so much to talk about. But I'll also say that philanthropy is not, again, to keep in mind, we hesitated to even use the name Women in Philanthropy when we set it up, because we didn't want it to seem like it was too exclusive to any net worth category, because it is not supposed to be. Because philanthropy is many things. You can start a fund at the foundation, this foundation, for less than $10,000, for less than $5,000. Other foundations are probably the same. It's accessible. And it's something that is driving so many aspects of society. And as women's wealth increases, more women want to be philanthropic, want to do it in innovative ways with outcomes and impact. So it's good to be empowered and armed with this conversation. So where to give is what matters to you. It's what story you want to tell, what's your narrative. And a lot of it is in this app. And if I learn how to, I'll share it back with all of you, because people have amazing passions that they want to give to and make a difference with. And so I don't know if there's any time for questions or if that's the ultimate cutoff. Okay. All right, well, thanks for sharing your time with me. And I have business cards, so you can find me on the app. You can email me. You have any more questions, you want to talk more, or I have the old school business cards with me as well. So thanks, great to talk with you all.